Picture this. A single man, one human being, controlled 90% of all the oil in America. 90%. That means every time your great-great-grandparents lit a lamp, cooked dinner, or heated their home, they were putting money into his pocket. Every single day, whether they wanted to or not. His name was John D. Rockefeller. And here's what they don't tell you in school. At the peak of his power, if you adjusted his wealth to today's money, he would be worth over $400 billion. That's more than Elon Musk, more than Jeff Bezos, more than anyone alive today, combined. But here's the question nobody asks. How does a quiet boy from a broken home, whose father was literally a con artist and a bigamist, become so powerful that the United States government had to invent new laws just to stop him? What did he know that we don't? And more importantly, what did he do that was so dangerous, so brilliant, and so ruthless that his name would become both a symbol of ultimate success and a warning about unchecked power? Stay with me, because this story isn't just about money. It's about control. It's about a man who played a game nobody else even knew existed. And by the end, you're going to see the world completely differently. Chapter 1. The boy who learned to count every penny. Let's go back to 1839. Upstate New York. A small wooden house that barely kept the cold out. John D. Rockefeller was born into poverty. But not just poverty. Chaos. His father, William Rockefeller, called himself Big Bill. He sold fake medicine. He pretended to be a doctor. He would disappear for months, sometimes years, leaving young John, his mother, and his siblings with nothing. No money, no food, no explanation. And here's the part that shaped everything. Big Bill had a second family, another wife, other children. John didn't find out until he was older. Imagine that. Your father is living a double life. You're hungry. Your mother is crying. And he's out there pretending you don't exist. But it gets worse. When Big Bill did come home, he would make deals with young John, loan him money, at interest, his own son, a child. And if John was even a day late paying him back, Big Bill would charge him penalties. Years later, Rockefeller said his father taught him to be sharp, but read between the lines. His father taught him that everyone is trying to take advantage of you, even family, even the people who are supposed to love you. That's not a lesson. That's a wound. He started keeping a ledger, a small notebook. At 10 years old, he would write down every penny he earned, every penny he spent. He raised turkeys. He did odd jobs. And he recorded everything. Why? Because he made a promise to himself. He would never be powerless again. Never be broke. Never be humiliated. By the time he was 16, he got his first real job as an assistant bookkeeper at a small firm in Cleveland. The pay? 50 cents a day. And you know what he did? He celebrated that day for the rest of his life. Every single year. September 26th. He called it Job Day, more important to him than his own birthday, because that job meant something. It meant survival. It meant control. It meant he was never going back to that cold house, waiting for a father who would never come. He saved everything. He lived like he was still poor, even when he started making money. His coworkers went out drinking. John went home and updated his ledger. They bought nice clothes. John wore the same suit until it fell apart. People thought he was weird, cheap, boring. They had no idea they were watching someone build a fortress, brick by brick, penny by penny. And soon, he would discover something that would change everything. A black, sticky substance bubbling up from the ground in Pennsylvania. Something people were calling rock oil. Chapter 2. The Perfect Moment. It's 1859. America is about to tear itself apart in a civil war. But in a small town called Titusville, Pennsylvania, something else is happening. A man named Edwin Drake just struck oil, and suddenly everyone goes crazy. It's the gold rush all over again. People are flocking to Pennsylvania. They're drilling everywhere. Oil is gushing out of the ground. Fortunes are being made overnight. But here's what everyone missed. Most of these people had no idea what they were doing. The oil fields were chaos. Explosions, fires, waste. People were literally letting oil spill into rivers because they couldn't contain it. And this is where Rockefeller saw something nobody else did. He was 20 years old. And while everyone else was rushing to Pennsylvania with shovels and dreams, Rockefeller did what he always did. He studied the numbers. And the numbers told him something fascinating. The people drilling for oil, most of them would fail. It was gambling. But someone had to refine the oil. Someone had to turn that crude sludge into kerosene that people could actually use. So while everyone else was rushing to drill oil, he asked a different question. Who's going to refine it? See, crude oil by itself is useless. You can't burn it in a lamp. You can't use it as fuel. You have to refine it. You have to turn it into kerosene. And in 1859, there were barely any refineries. So Rockefeller made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to dig for oil. That was too risky, too unpredictable. Instead, he would control the oil after it came out of the ground. In 1863, he invested $4,000 into his first refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. And immediately, he started doing something different, something nobody expected. He became obsessed with efficiency, fanatically obsessed. While other refineries wasted oil and burned money, Rockefeller figured out how to use every single drop. He even used the waste products. He turned the leftover sludge into lubricants. He made paraffin wax for candles. He sold petroleum jelly. Nothing was wasted. He made his own barrels from his own wood. He owned his own delivery wagons. He bought his own warehouses. Everything was in-house. Everything was controlled. He cut costs so low that he could sell kerosene cheaper than anyone else and still make massive profits. While his competitors were making $2 per barrel, Rockefeller was making $3. Within 3 years, his refinery was the largest in Cleveland. But that wasn't enough. Not even close. Because Rockefeller wasn't just building a business. He was preparing for war. And his weapon? It wasn't violence. It was patience and math. And a willingness to do things that nobody else had the stomach for. Chapter 3. The Great Betrayal. Now here's where it gets ruthless. Rockefeller looked at the oil industry and saw a problem. Too many competitors. Too much chaos. Prices were swinging wildly. He hated chaos. Chaos meant risk. And Rockefeller didn't take risks. He eliminated them. So he decided to do something that had never been done before. He would buy everyone out, every refinery, every competitor, until he controlled everything. But he didn't just walk up and ask nicely. He played a different game. A game so brilliant and so vicious that it would become the blueprint for corporate domination for the next century. First, he went to the railroads. Back then, if you wanted to move oil, you needed trains. And Rockefeller made a secret deal with them. Give me a discount. A huge discount. Cheaper than anyone else. And in return, I'll give you all of my business. The railroads agreed. Why wouldn't they? He was their biggest customer. But here's the evil genius part. Rockefeller didn't just get a discount for himself. He made the railroads charge his competitors more. Sometimes double. Sometimes triple. And then, get this, the railroads would pay Rockefeller a cut of what they charged his competitors. Read that again. His rivals were literally funding his empire every time they shipped their own oil. Now imagine you're a small refinery owner. You've been in business for years. You're working 16-hour days. And suddenly, out of nowhere, your shipping costs double, triple. You're bleeding money. And you have no idea why. You check with other refineries. Same thing. Everyone's suffering. Except one. Standard Oil. Somehow, Rockefeller's shipping costs are going down while yours are going up. How is that possible? You don't know. You can't know. Because the deals are secret. And then one day, a quiet, calm man in a dark suit shows up at your door. John D. Rockefeller. He doesn't threaten you. He doesn't yell. He speaks softly, politely, almost kindly. He makes you an offer. Sell me your refinery. I'll give you a fair price. Or don't. And watch your business collapse in 6 months. What do? You're trapped. You know it. He knows it. Most people sold. They had no choice. And those who refused? Rockefeller would drop his prices so low they couldn't compete. He would sell kerosene at a loss for months, even years, just to starve them out. And once they went bankrupt, he'd buy their refinery for pennies on the dollar. In 1872, in just 48 days, Rockefeller bought 22 out of 26 refineries in Cleveland. 48 days. He called it consolidation. Everyone else called it something different. The Cleveland Massacre. By 1880, Rockefeller controlled 90% of all oil refining in America. 90%. Standard Oil wasn't just a company. It was a shadow government. And Rockefeller was its king. He controlled the railroads through secret deals. He controlled the pipelines. He controlled the distribution. He even controlled the politicians, judges, lawmakers. They were all on his payroll. If you wanted to compete with Standard Oil, you weren't just fighting a company. You were fighting a system, a machine designed to crush you. But here's the thing about becoming a king. Eventually, people start asking questions. And when they start digging, they find monsters. Chapter 4. The Monster Behind the Curtain. The year is 1890. America is waking up. Journalists are writing exposes. They're calling Rockefeller a robber baron. They're saying he's destroying the free market, that he's a monopoly, a tyrant. One journalist, a woman named Ida Tarbell, made it her life's mission to expose him. And she had a personal reason. Her father owned a small oil business in Pennsylvania. A good business. An honest business. And Rockefeller crushed it, destroyed it, left her father broken. So Ida spent years investigating. She dug through court documents. She interviewed former Standard Oil employees, people who had seen things. And what she found was chilling. Secret deals, bribes, spies planted inside rival companies. Rockefeller had people everywhere. He knew what his competitors were doing before they did. He knew their shipments, their costs, their strategies. If a competitor was planning to build a new refinery, Rockefeller knew. If they were struggling financially, Rockefeller knew. And then he would strike, precisely, surgically. Ida published her findings in a series of articles that shocked the nation. The History of the Standard Oil Company, 19 installments, each one more damning than the last. The public was outraged. The government finally stepped in. And in 1911, after years of legal battles, the Supreme Court did something unprecedented. They broke up Standard Oil. They shattered it into 34 separate companies. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron. They all came from Rockefeller's empire. You'd think this would destroy him, right? That he'd lose everything? Here's the insane part. Breaking up Standard Oil made Rockefeller even richer. Each of those 34 companies. He owned shares in all of them. And once they were competing separately, their stock prices skyrocketed. His wealth doubled, then tripled. The government tried to destroy him. And they accidentally made him the richest man in history. Reporters tried to interview him about it. But Rockefeller? He didn't say a word. He just smiled. That cold, thin smile. And stepped back into the shadows. Because he knew something. Something darker. Something true. He had already won. Chapter 5. The Final Trick. By the time Standard Oil was broken up, Rockefeller had already shifted. He wasn't focused on oil anymore. He was focused on something bigger. Legacy. See, Rockefeller knew what people thought of him. Monster, tyrant, villain. But now? Now he wanted something different. He wanted to be remembered as a hero. So he did something brilliant. He gave it all away. Well, not all of it. He died with a fortune worth over $400 billion in today's money. But he gave away enough to change the world. In 1913, he created the Rockefeller Foundation. He poured hundreds of millions of dollars into it, and he told them, find cures, build schools, help people, and they did. The foundation funded medical research that eradicated hookworm in the American South, a disease that had crippled entire communities. They wiped it out, saved millions of lives. They funded the development of a yellow fever vaccine, a disease that had killed thousands every year. Gone. They built the University of Chicago from nothing. They funded black colleges in the South when nobody else would. His name was on everything. And slowly, the narrative started to change. Newspapers that had called him a monster started calling him a philanthropist. By the end of his life, most people had forgotten what he did to build that fortune. They only remembered what he did with it. He lived to 97 years old. He died in his sleep in 1937, peacefully, surrounded by wealth, power, and a carefully crafted image of kindness. The newspapers ran glowing obituaries. A great American, a man who gave back. And that's exactly what he wanted. But here's the question. Was any of it real? Did he actually change? Or was this just the final move? The ultimate strategy? Rewrite your story before someone else does. Because when you look at his life, you see a pattern. A boy who was abandoned, who was humiliated, who decided that the only way to survive was to control everything. The money, the industry, the government, and finally, the story itself. He wasn't evil for fun. He was evil because he was terrified. Terrified of being powerless. Terrified of being that hungry kid again, waiting for a father who would never come home. And fear? Fear is something all of us understand. So here's the truth they don't tell you. John D. Rockefeller didn't just build an empire. He built a blueprint, a system, a playbook for how to control everything. And that system? It's still here. Right now. All around you. Every time you fill up your gas tank. Every time you see a mega corporation crush a small business. Every time you watch billionaires play games with money. Most people can't even imagine you're seeing Rockefeller's ghost. He proved something terrifying. The one person with enough patience, enough ruthlessness, and enough intelligence can control everything. The economy, the government, the media, history itself. Look around. Look at the companies that run your life. Amazon, Google, Apple. They control the platforms. They control the data. They control how you communicate, how you shop, how you think. Rockefeller controlled the railroads to control the oil. Today's titans control the internet to control everything else. Different century. Same game. And here's the final twist. Rockefeller won. Even after death. Completely. Totally. His name is on buildings, universities, foundations. The Rockefeller Center stands in the heart of New York City like a monument, not to his crimes, to his generosity. We remember him as a philanthropist now, not a monster. He rewrote the story, and we believed it. So what's the lesson here? Power doesn't come from money. Money comes from power, and power comes from control. Control over resources, control over people, control over information, control over the story. Rockefeller understood that better than anyone in history. The question is, who's playing that game now? Who's the next Rockefeller, quietly building an empire while we're all distracted by the noise? Look at who controls your food, your energy, your information, your attention. Look at who's buying up farmland, who owns the satellites, who decides what you see on your screen. The smart ones don't make Rockefeller's mistake anymore. He got caught. He got famous. He became the villain. Now they smile for the cameras. They give TED Talks about changing the world. They donate to charities. They control the narrative from day one. They're Rockefeller with better PR. So here's my challenge to you. Look deeper. Question everything. Every time someone gets too powerful, ask yourself, what's the cost? Who's paying it? And who's really in control? If this story made you see the world differently, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Someone who still believes the system is fair. Someone who thinks billionaires are just lucky or smart. And subscribe, because there are more untold stories like this. Stories about power, control, and the people who shaped everything without you even knowing. The truth is out there. You just have to be willing to look. See you in the next one.